Good evening.
Good evening, Tony. How are you, darling?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Good. Happy New Year, honey. And I mean that from my heart.
Happy
I
New
wish,
Year to you as well.
I wish you the happiest, the healthiest, the most prosperous, the most lovely. Oh, I see you put up the photo that I sent you.
Oh, this is an awesome photo.
Isn't
I mean,
it amazing? I
the
found it today.
colorization in it. I mean, it's
Ah,
my chair is hiding most of it, but
I know.
it's phenomenal.
Phenomenal. Yeah, that's, on my bucket list. I want to just be in a place where I feel safe and comfortable going to Egypt. And I'm hoping that time will come in the future. The world is just, there's so much instability. And, of course, we're
Right.
dealing with that. Today is the second anniversary of the attack on the Capitol, the storming of the castle, the insurrection, call it what you will. It
Right.
was an attempted coup to overturn our government and should be acknowledged as such. My
Agreed.
mother and sister and I spoke about it a lot today because we were all together 2 years ago as it happened. And we all acknowledged that we're still in shock,
Yeah.
that we're still traumatized by what we witnessed that day. Um, we've got a lot of healing to do as a country, and we've got a lot of righting of the ship to do. But we made it. We made it through the worst thing that's ever happened in this country politically since the Civil War.
Right.
And although I'm in Georgia, and believe me, they still call it the war between the states. I'm like, are you kidding? Fly your Confederate flag high. You see it everywhere here.
Oh yeah.
Still it's shocking to me. It is. But we have a lot of work to do and a lot of healing to do. But I couldn't let this day go unacknowledged, particularly because our show fell on the anniversary
Right.
of this. Oh my. I'm just a mess. I was just outside with the dogs. I'm a mess. Here we go. Okay, so anyway, tonight I asked my dear friend and my co-host on Soul School Sojourn, which airs on Monday nights here on KGRA, if he would join me for the show, because he wasn't able to join me on Monday. And I had one of those shows, Tony, you know me very well. And every now and then it just comes piling out. Here it comes, there
Sure.
it is. And I had one of those moments. God bless Chanel, my producer. God bless her.
Your voice dropped out. I think you froze. She'll unfreeze in a minute. We'll just give her a second. But yeah, it looks like she froze up there for a second. Maybe she'll be back. Maybe it'll take a moment. I hope she didn't know. But there she is.
There I am. I just moved the computer a little bit. I might not be. I'm hardwired in, but I don't know. I moved everything. So I might have screwed something up. I apologize for that. Either that or my energy is going to screw with the show from start to finish. And so let me just say in advance, Tony, be prepared to hop right in, with Jeff, should need be. But, there were a lot of things that I wanted to talk about with him tonight and share with him and kind of revisit a little bit of what happened. And if you have a chance, and I should have asked you before, we actually started the show, but if you have a chance, ask Bill to send you over the link, and we can put it on the bottom of the show. So anybody that wants to know what I'm talking about that didn't see it will be able to visit it and see what was, for all intents and purposes, It wasn't a confession because I didn't do anything wrong. And I didn't deserve what happened to me, but there were a weird series of events that occurred this week. I feel like the cosmos, there's stuff stirring in the cosmos. Did you have a funky week?
Yeah, again, yeah, absolutely. It's things are out of balance, and for so many reasons. But it's hard to get a handle on starting 2023 out so far. Things have just not seemed, even the end of December, things just didn't seem in place. They didn't flow right. They didn't, and it's still appearing that way.
Yeah, I know. I'm hoping that tonight's full wolf moon, the first full moon of 2023, will help to balance some of the energies that have been flowing and swirling and circulating.
Yeah.
But I think this is a good time to bring Jeff in, because he had the same the last 2 weeks have been basically the same for him as it's been for us. And if it's happening for us, all three of us, and of course Bill as well, then it's probably happening for a lot of other people too, which is why we thought this is something that we should discuss tonight. So without further ado, let's bring on Jeff Turner, my dear friend. And stay with us, Tony. Stay with us. I mean, hi, there you are.
Hey, everybody.
Yeah, because, it's at least for this part of the discussion, we should talk about, what's happening. What exactly is going on that is causing interpersonal conflicts, that's causing just, upheaval in our lives that nobody expected. Jeff, I know you've texted me a couple of times going, oh my God, really?
Mm-hmm.
And you don't even have to tell me what the details are, because I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah. And it's rare that I'll send a text like that. So if I do, it means
something.
Something rather hellish is occurring.
Hellish,
yeah.
Wonderful. Right.
But yeah. It is bizarre, and it's been a bizarre lead up into the new year. Oh, hey everybody, by the way. I didn't do any kind of
my wonderful friend and co-host.
Yes. But it had been such a bizarre lead up for me, even into Christmas. There was just a weird vibe where things didn't quite feel, I don't know, things didn't quite feel even like Christmas to me. I had a few moments, but there was just kind of a strange vibe in the air, and I just had a sense that something was afoot, and I don't know exactly even yet what that something was or is, but I'm working very diligently to discover that for myself. But especially in the days just past Christmas and leading into the new year, some real shit went down, pardon my French. And
that's not French, that's definitely English.
That is English, and I apologize to the French listeners for insulting your language. Where did that even come from, where we say pardon my French after we use
I know, when we use English swear words and we blame the French. Yeah. Well, I'm half French. I'm starting to take exception to it.
Yeah, I am too. I'm in there too. So I don't know. It must have been some movie from the 80s or something, I'm guessing.
Yeah, probably.
Anyways, some real stuff went down, and it was bizarre. Some stuff I really did not see coming. Some stuff that really just kind of hit me like a mugger from around the corner. That was the last thing I was expecting. And really kind of took my breath away, and has kind of left me reeling a little bit. And I texted you today before, just in preparation for the show tonight, and just said, just so you know, I'm a little raw emotionally, so I do apologize if I have any kind of breakdown. I will attempt to control my emotions. Typically, I'm pretty stoic and pretty good at that, so I think I'll be able to keep it in line, but the hour is late, so we shall see.
Yeah. I'm the opposite. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I wipe my nose with my sleeve. I wipe my tears with my sleeve. I am emotionally available at all times, I guess is the way to put it. It's I'm very emotionally expressive, and I don't think at my age that's probably, I'm not going to outgrow it. You know what I mean? So I just let me be me, and I figure anything that I'm offloading, you know, no matter the circumstances, is probably healthy for me, because I mean, I probably get like really angry about once a decade, like really angry, like loud, angry, cry, ugly, angry. But I have little spurts, and I get zapped with feelings that like rise immediately. I can't watch an episode of Sunday Morning without crying at least twice. I can't watch a Publix commercial without crying at least once. I can't watch, you know, God knows I can't watch any of the Humane Society or ASPCA commercials. I leap on top of the remote to change the channel or turn the TV off instantly when they come on. Just the first two notes of the commercial, and I'm already like, my stomach is up in my throat, my heart is pounding, and I can't find the remote fast enough because I don't want to look at chained animals in sub-zero weather. Sorry, don't want to. I know it happens. Why don't you just show us the animals that have been rescued and rehabbed and how happy they are now, instead of the way that you found them? You know, it's, oh God. Oh, I ran Tony off probably because he's got a puppy he wants to go hug right now because I'm talking about this. But you know, Tony, hop back in anytime you want to share any of what's been going on with you. But what I will say is, and Jeff, you don't have to share any details. I didn't share a whole lot of details when I did the show on Monday. And I didn't use any names. That said, I got a call. I don't even know if you got to see the show because I know you've been working so much, but I got a text message in the wee hours of the morning, New Year's night. So I guess it was technically the day after New Year's, and it made me wonder about how people consider their regrets and the circumstances in life that trouble them, that linger with them. If they have a conscience, you know, to be able to have that crisis of conscience, which you can only have if you've got a conscience. But years ago, I had a man who I guess you could say pursued me. It was not long after the movie came out. And he seemed, it's kind of a public figure, seemed to have a pretty squeaky clean background and was so well known that I figured, it'll be okay. He must be, relatively safe. Well, I never really, it never was. One thing I need to clarify, and Tony, if you have a chance, get the link for the show from Bill and just attach it to the bottom of the screen if you can, from last Monday night Soul School. So anybody that wants to know more about this, can watch that episode. But, I wasn't trying to shame anyone. I wasn't trying to embarrass anyone. Nobody was named, as I mentioned. But I got this message from him years and years after I had turned and walked away from him for boldface lying to me. I don't understand why people think that I won't know if they're lying to me. How I would not know that, how I would not feel it, but that said, the real betrayal came when he began hitting on one of my friends, unbeknownst to me, and she played along with it I think it was more than that, but she said she played along with it. And then she divulged everything that he said about me that was a lie to a close circle of my friends. And it was, I would say, single-handedly, no competition, the most humiliating experience of my adult life. It was horrifying. And he didn't, under the pretense of asking me a question about some paranormal something, got in touch with me, and I knew, it was just an excuse that that what had happened all those years ago had, and on some level, had troubled him. So I let him know. He called me the next morning when I didn't respond to a text because I was walking the dogs, feeding the dogs, getting my mother a pain pill, getting my mother out of bed, I mean, I had my morning ritual here. I'm in Georgia with my mother and my sister. So I was doing stuff in the house and I didn't respond to his last text message. So he took it upon himself to call me. And, I don't even know why I answered the phone, but I did. And it was weird hearing his voice all these years later. But really, it never got to even close to what I would call love. There wasn't even time. We talked on the phone and online and FaceTime for, a couple of months before we actually met, which was one time. And then everything surfaced and that was it. It was over. But it must have troubled him because he did reach out to me under the pretense of me answering some paranormal question, which was absurd. And I took the opportunity, which I think was probably a good thing in hindsight, to tell him how that episode in my life had affected me, and that it had literally altered the trajectory of my life. And that I haven't gone out on a date, nor have I accepted an invitation since with anybody. And I've lived a very solitary life because he caused me to, we talked about causal relationships, but, cause and event. Well, we didn't talk. I did all the talking. And I basically told him, I said, that was such an upsetting, traumatizing betrayal that, on both their parts, my former girlfriend and him, that it undermined my faith in humanity. It caused me to not trust myself in terms of my own decision-making ability, and it caused me not to trust others, which I've kind of returned back to that rather simplistic, childlike way in which I view the world now. I do have a tendency to trust people, and then if they do something to hurt me, then I know I can't trust them. But I went for an extended period of time where I didn't trust anybody, and I didn't disclose anything to anybody because I felt like it would be, weaponized against me. It jaded me. It made me a little bit cynical. About relationships, and it caused me to become very solitary. Even though I'm surrounded by my family and my friends are, a very active part of my life, and my life is filled with love, I'm alone and will likely stay that way because I just don't trust that I can make a good decision. I mean, people will let you know precisely who they want you to think they are, for a very long time before you actually, see who they are, and if there is a lack of character, or if there is an issue with them, or keeping secrets, lying, stuff like that. And because I'm an open book, I suppose on some level, I just assume that everybody else is, and that's a very foolish assumption to make. And I told him, I said, the shabby treatment that I received and did not deserve, the betrayal which occurred, in a way I should be grateful for, because it caused me to grow up and look at the world, take my rose-colored glasses off for a while and just, look at the world realistically. And, this is how people can be. And that pained me, because I want everybody to be an open book. I want everybody to be trustworthy, and not everyone is. So that was something I had to deal with this week, and I think I've done pretty well with it. How did you deal with your challenges this week overall?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll keep the details here for now, but sometimes it's just the surprise and the shock of, well, exactly what you just described, where maybe there's trust or faith. And then out of left field, there comes this anomaly that you certainly did not expect to enter your realm of experience, and it just throws you for a loop and discombobulates you and leaves you reeling and really just not sure, as you said, like, can I trust myself? Can I trust myself to make the right decision when it comes to a relationship? Can I trust myself when it comes to who I trust? Those are the challenges of things like this. Those are the challenges of things like this, and especially when it deals with relationships and such. I've been thinking, just doing a lot of thinking and praying and meditating and soul searching and all that good stuff we do when shit hits the fan. Pardon my English. And today I had this thought hit me that was both profound to me and offensive, because it certainly did not fit with how I wanted to feel, but I love those kind of interruptions that contradict the emotional state I want to be in. And the thought was just simply, what if you trusted the voice and the story of hope even 1% as much as you trust the story and the narrative of fear?
Yeah.
And again, that was profound to me, but it was also offensive to me, because it's not the way that I wanted to let myself feel. I wanted to let myself feel a much different way, but I love when projectiles smash into my projections and mess me all up. And all day I've been kind of meditating on that thought, like, what if I trusted the narrative of hope even 1% as much as I trust the narrative of fear? Because the truth is, most of the time, the story that fear tells us about what your future is going to be, what's going to happen, what's coming next, what's going to happen as it concerns situation A, B, or C, 9 times out of 10, it doesn't happen the way that fear tells you it's going to happen.
Right.
Or it doesn't happen nearly as dramatically as fear tells you it's going to happen. Also, 9 times out of 10, it doesn't happen near as dramatically as like extreme hope tells you it's going to happen either. because it's not that you wake up tomorrow and you win the lottery and you realize that you're a long lost relative of Steve Jobs and he had written you into his will and you're the heir of the Apple fortune or whatever, and whatever. I mean, that's extreme hope. Typically, it's more like what seems like a kind of benign, things kind of just stay the same in some way.
Yeah.
And you can kind of choose from that place, that plateau, if you will, where you're going to go from here. But there's hope in that, because that means the worst case scenario was probably not going to happen either, in the same way that the extreme best case scenario isn't going to happen either. But we are creatures who evolved to survive on the savannas of Africa. We're primates who left the trees and we're constantly scanning our environment for predators. And so when we think we see something that desires, to prey upon us, we latch onto that and we assume that is ultimate reality, because to assume that is ultimate reality is ultimately to survive. And so there's something deep in our DNA speaking to us epigenetically that tells us, assume the worst. And if you assume the worst, you'll survive. But we're not just primates on the savannas of Africa anymore, dodging saber-toothed tigers. Our problems are emotional and spiritual and relational these days. And it's not typically an issue of literal survival. It's typically an issue of keeping our hearts from hurting, right? Yeah. And but we still have that same tendency to slip into that, assume the worst, because if you assume the worst, you'll survive, right? And so fear comes along and tells us a story. Ooh, this is what's going to happen in this scenario. Believe me, this is what's going to happen. And we tend to believe fear over hope, because believing fear to us equates to survival. But fear's story doesn't usually come to pass either in the way that fear tells it. Not exactly in the extreme sense that it tells us it's going to happen. And it just dawned on me. I was washing the dishes this morning at like 6 a.m. or something. And it just hit me like, what if you trusted the voice of hope 1% as much as you trusted the voice of fear? And I was like, damn it, would you stop it?
Yeah.
But I was like, yeah, because the truth of the matter is, all of us could probably look over the last year of our lives, or even the entirety of our lives, and we could look at it and we could come up with probably at least 2 different stories. One of which is everything bad that could happen happened. I'm a helpless, hapless victim, and life sucks. The other could be a series of events unfolded in my life that prepared me to step into something that I would not have been qualified or capable of stepping into had these things not happened. It does not make these things any less sucky than they are. It does not make these things right or okay. It doesn't vindicate or validate or sacralize the actions that brought me to this place of pain. However, these things undoubtedly and undeniably prepared me for something that I would not have been otherwise prepared for. And it's harder to tell yourself that story because that story requires having a little bit of hope. And I understand the difficulty in telling ourselves that story. Believe me when I tell you I understand the difficulty involved in telling ourselves that story. But the truth is, we could all look back at the events of our lives. In most cases, it doesn't apply across the board. But in most cases, we could look at our lives and tell ourselves one of these 2 stories. If you've ever read the book or seen the movie Life of Pi, as an example, you see the whole movie as being one story. And then at the end, spoiler alert, at the end you find out that the actual events that you were seeing played out in this movie or reading about in this book, it was actually a completely different thing, much more tragic. But the teller of the story said, basically, what's a better story, the one I told you or the real one? And we have a choice of how we view the story of our lives. And I'm not talking about denying reality. I'm not talking about denying denying the things that have happened to us. But we have a choice in how we view them and how we frame them and how we understand them.
And how we respond to them.
Exactly. And isn't that what Viktor Frankl said? That's the one That's the one
Yes.
thing you can't take away from a person. You can strip every other thing away from a person, but the one thing you can't take, the last thing that remains, is the person's ability to choose how they respond to the situation that they're in. And this is coming from an individual who survived Auschwitz, right? Viktor Frankl. And, I don't know. I'm just thinking, like, if we have the ability to tell ourselves these two stories, boy, I just don't see the value in telling myself the negative one, except for sometimes you got to face reality. Just see things as they are. I understand that. But at the same time, man, choosing to listen to and believe the voice of hope over the voice of fear is a power. And it's the one thing nobody can take from you. Like, if you choose to see a situation in light of hope, even if that hope doesn't pan out the way you're hoping it will, you still held on to something. You still held on to, like, this inner flame that no one can snuff out, and on the other end of the situation, regardless of how it all washes out, you've retained your humanity. You've retained, the truth of who you really are. And, that's a long way of saying that's just kind of what I've been meditating on really over the last couple of weeks. But intensely today, that thought came to me, and I just want to throw it out there again to just all the viewers and all the listeners is, man, what if we believed the voice of hope 1% as much as we believe the voice of fear? Because the truth is, fear's voice and fear's story rarely occurs in the way that it says it's going to occur. And so why not choose to be hopeful? Well, sometimes because it's just damn difficult to do so. But if we can find the strength to do so, it makes all the difference. And it's the one thing that nothing can take from us. Anyways.
I need to flip that concept on its head for just a minute.
Please.
Because I think it was my inherent hopefulness,
Sure.
something that is intrinsic to me, that even allowed me to initially respond to this man's outreach.
And that's a good point. That's a good point.
I've spent so much of my life alone, and would at that time was thinking, maybe there's enough room in my life for a relationship. Maybe there's enough room in my life, even if it's long distance, to foster a relationship with this individual. He seemed he seemed so earnest, so authentic, and so I think it was my hopefulness that got me into trouble in the first place. And then it was on the back end of it, having to reconcile the fact that I had forgiven him, but could not ever afford to forget how I was treated. And when I told my sister that he had called, I mean, she immediately, her ire was up immediately. Not him. Where'd he come from? Right out of the blue. What's happening? Did he apologize? And I said, well, no, actually he didn't. And about 5 minutes later, I got this very long text message where he did apologize twice and said that he hadn't realized that what happened between us was so hurtful to me. At which point I was like, and what planet do you live on? How can you possibly be that oblivious to another person? You were there for these events as they transpired too. Right. How could you not know that caused grievous pain for me? And she's like, well, are you going to forgive him? And I said, well, I think that I forgave him a long time ago. I just, I wrote him off. He was persona non grata. He was out of my life. I didn't forgive him for him. I forgave him for me so I could move on. And she says to me, then why did this come up again? What, where did this come from? If this is all, settled law if this is, what a stare decisis, I think she said. Stare decisis, she's so funny. But she said, why did the universe throw this back in your lap? And I said, well, maybe it wasn't about me. Maybe it was about him. Maybe it was the new year and he was thinking about regrets in his own life and things that he had done that, as he said, were not his finest hour.
Mm-hmm.
Really? Not your finest hour,
Yeah.
Yeah, you're still married, you son of a bitch. Yeah. Really? You forgot to mention that after you lied about it?
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
So
no, that's a good.
I did apologize, and I said, and she's like, "Are you going to answer his message?" And I said, "No." Why? 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 It's not my job to make him feel better about what he did.
Right.
It's my job to make myself okay.
Yeah.
Not him. It's his responsibility to, take care of his own emotional baggage. And I don't, and why would I open myself to something that was so painful the first time with somebody that is clearly, cannot be trusted.
Yeah.
Why would I do that when I have so many people in my life that are so full? Hi, Kathy. I love you, darling. That are so full of light and love and positivity and would never, ever even conceive of doing something to harm our friendship.
Yeah.
How about I just circle the wagons with those people? The people that we have here on A World Awakening that are here every single week, week in and week out, and I do lay all of this out for people to listen to and to absorb and, do maybe some comparative analysis with their own lives. Because you get to a certain point in life where you've probably experienced a lot of stuff and not all of it has been, sweetness and roses. It's we learn through our mistakes. We learn through, a wide variety of experiences. Yeah. Oh, Brady, you're so sweet. Oh, yeah. Oh, honey, I'm sorry for swearing, Brady. Brady's a young man, and I don't want to teach him bad words.
I'm the one throwing out all the English tonight, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know. Too late. I can't help it. I believe he's 16 now. I think Brady. He'll put it back up. How old is my sweet Brady? I have. Life is hard, and it's a series of obstacles, trial and error. And you're going to get slammed upside the head unexpectedly at some point or another, sometimes literally. It's really unfortunate, but I don't think that it's supposed to be. I don't think it's supposed to be easy, Jeff. I've often said that the road to forgiveness and redemption is paved with golden cobblestones of forgiveness. The road to redemption is paved with golden cobblestones of forgiveness. I can't even quote my own quotes anymore. And I think that is true. But I don't think that I think that regret is real. And anybody that says that they've never had a regret in their life about anything is probably being disingenuous with themselves and with whomever they're saying that to. Because they don't want to recall. But I thought that it was interesting that, Tony said his whole universe, was filled with upheaval the last couple of weeks. Yours was. I can think of at least a dozen people that I've gotten a message from in the last week or so that are like, what's going on? Why is this happening?
Yeah.
For myriad reasons, people like this tumult that is happening. And I have to wonder if it's just the universe and there's a belly laugh going on and it's, it's affecting us, like the pebble in the pond. It's got a ripple effect through the cosmos and we're all getting hit with stuff that's just kind of coming up out of nowhere when you least expect it.
Yeah.
And so ultimately the only control that we have over it is how we react.
There you go. Yep. That's right. That's right.
So I told him what I thought. And all these years later, I told him, and I never raised my voice. I just told him that what the impact, the adverse effect had been on my life because of what happened with both of them, not just him, but her too. And that it altered the way that I perceived people and it altered my trajectory in life.
Yeah.
And that ultimately it was a good thing for me because it really caused me to grow up and to understand that not everyone has your best intentions at heart and that there are unscrupulous people in the world who are ready, willing, and able to exploit you if they are given the opportunity.
Yep.
And I gave him the opportunity. So, ultimately, is it all on me? No, I'm not responsible for the behavior. But I'll tell you what, Jeff, this week, how you've been saying, like today you were meditating and prayerful and, trying to, in your way, reconcile what happened to you. And I think this week I've felt very tired and very drained. And I think it's because of all the emotional and the intellectual, the cerebral activity going on around this. And the deeper I go, the more I let it disturb me that all of this happened and let it and wondered, why did this come back up? Now, all this time has passed, and now that all this time has passed, and it made me ask a couple of questions. First of all, had I really reconciled it, or had I put it on planned ignore? Which one was that? And second, the thing that I've spent probably the most time thinking about is my the anger at myself, because I'm a very strong woman. And even though there have been times in my life where I have been victimized, I always come out on top. Yep. I always make sure that I am the victor instead of the victim. And I resented so much being victimized the way that I was. And the more I really looked at it, the more I realized until Monday, this past Monday, I hadn't ever made that leap from victim to victor. And in cleansing, in the outpouring, which occurred in a very sedate, measured, calm way, for me to have even come up with the sentences that I used, for all of that to pour out of me over the course of a 5 or 10 minute diatribe where he was respectfully quiet, which I'll give him credit for. because he certainly didn't treat me respectfully in the past, but he did listen. He heard me out. That was my leap from victim to victor, that happened.
Yeah.
And so now I can cleanse this from me. In fact, I feel like I already did, like I showered that toxicity off of me, out of me.
Yeah.
And this is something that happened 8 or 9 years, a long time ago.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe you're overthinking your stuff. Maybe we have the luxury in our lives to overthink scenarios instead of just dealing with it and moving on.
Yeah.
And not everyone does, which would explain why a lot of stuff, piles up on people emotionally and then has a tendency to explode, and sometimes in kind of inconceivable ways about things that are entirely separate and distinct from, like my dad does that, he'll have all this stress build up over here, and then he'll blow up because the mail came an hour late. It's like, okay, way to channel your stress, Dad. Why don't you just deal with what's causing you the stress instead of freaking out about the mail truck? You know what I mean? It's just a case in point.
Yeah.
I wonder, what do you think about that? I mean, maybe that was it all along. Maybe it was the one time in my life that I suffered such a degrading, humiliating episode that I never did, that I just put on planned ignore because I couldn't deal with it because it hurt too much.
Right.
And so it left me, unbeknownst to me, thinking I've overcome it and moved on.
Yeah.
Where there was this stuff, this toxic brew that for whatever reason surfaced when it did.
Yeah.
That forced me to look at it now versus the better part of a decade ago.
Yeah.
Where it's just been kind of waiting in the wings and troubling me and keeping me from being able to interact with people or, specifically an individual that I might be able to kindle a relationship with that I stop myself from doing because I don't trust myself to make a good decision.
Yeah.
So maybe now I can breathe. I feel lighter.
Yeah.
I feel lighter. I think, Erin's sending me energy and, I got people, there she is. There's my girl.
Yeah.
It was still hanging out somewhere in your energetic field. Had to feel it to heal it. Interesting and very well put, my darling.
Yeah.
Interestingly, and I did talk to her about this after the fact. Just before I got the text message from him the following morning after getting the wee hours text, I had this unbelievable pain shoot from, like, it felt like it was in my core and it shot out my back like electricity. And I hadn't moved funny or done anything strange or anything like that. And it was just, it was like a strike of lightning from within leaving my body.
Yeah.
And I told her about it. I'm like, oh God, I don't know what I did to my back.
Yeah.
It feels better now, but it hurt like hell for a couple of seconds. And I could visualize it. It was just one of those pains that was so severe when it came. It was like I could see lightning leaving my body. It was really bizarre.
Yeah.
And then I get the message from him.
Yeah.
And she said, I can't remember exactly what she said, but it was almost like some kind of an anticipation, like a cleansing that was about to happen, or I can't even remember, we talked
Yeah.
about it for a little while and I can't remember exactly how she put it, but it seemed like a logical, plausible explanation.
Yeah.
And it was just a random, well, I guess it wasn't random, but it was, there was kind of an instantaneous thing about it that didn't seem to make any sense and didn't seem to have a cause.
Yeah.
But it was, I mean, physiologically, I had a reaction.
Yeah.
And then it coincided with the incoming message that I did not want to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to engage with him. And he asked at the end of the last message that he sent me with the 2 apologies attached. Why can't, it seems to me, basically this wasn't that big a deal that we can't be friends. Again, and what universe are you from? Okay. And wanted to know if we could be.
Yeah. I lost your audio there.
Looks like she froze up again. So
Yeah. Okay.
maybe she moved it. I'm sure she'll be back shortly, but
Yeah. Well, I guess something I would say until Andrea comes back, and something that was coming to my mind as she was talking, is really 2 things.
Okay.
Did you
There
want to
we go.
continue your thought? I didn't want to.
Yeah. No. No. I'm fine.
Okay.
I forgot where I was.
Okay.
Tony. I don't know what's wrong, honey. I'm hardwired, and again, maybe it's just spectrum in Georgia because everything in Georgia is like 200 years behind.
it could be a variety of so many different things. And, as signals get sent across the country and, who knows what weather they're having in between,
Yeah.
emotional
I'm trying
stuff.
to temper my energy because, sometimes what happens sometimes when I throw off like a certain amount of energy and I have a tendency to short circuit or even crash my computer. It's happened over and over and over again.
Computer and other electronics as well. So
Ask Lenny about,
very
I believe, 2 phones and a couple of iPads that I've destroyed from long distance. I have. But anyway, while we have you, Tony, you've been, I'm sure, listening to what we're talking about, which is basically the human condition. We're not talking about anything that like a bajillion other people haven't been through in, a wide variety of scenarios. So, what's your take on all of this?
Well, I mean, for what we're explaining compared to like Jeff was explaining, I mean, every individual has their own set, I think, of things that, we try to work through. We know their struggles for us. There are things that, depending on how severe the interaction or how negative it feels, there are certain people that will take a much lower degree of it and feel like it was the biggest event of their life or the most damaging. And there's other ones that have maybe experienced it more often or just deal with it in a different way. So I think that determines somewhat how people maybe react to. But the first thing I'm going to say is that, when in your case, Andrea, when you're talking about conflicts that are relationship oriented, I am the worst person in the world to ask, because if it wasn't for the fact that my wife is an absolute saint and is so patient and so understanding, that is why we survive, because she's always there to either pick me up or correct me if I'm needing correction. But everyone handles those things differently. And then there's things that are so personable to each individual that when they come across something that rubs those feathers the wrong way, they will react harsher and stronger, and that emotion flows out because it's something they absolutely do not like, can't stand, and the smallest item again will send that volcano into eruption because they don't want to see it, hear it, deal with it. So I think personality, experience, and everything in between helps a person either adjust or react to certain circumstances. And I think everybody probably handles things a little differently based on what they've experienced, what they did or did not experience. And I think that plays a big part in how things affect individual to individual.
Yeah. And I think that too, we're hardwired as human beings with a certain set and subset of emotions. But then, you know what, experiences in our life accumulate and how we process them over the decades of our lives, that, you know, factors into the equation as well. You know, we're very complicated animals. We really are, you know. And Jeff, you and I, having, you know, both been students of philosophy, have studied, you know, the notion of free will versus determinism. Is it our free will that gets us into trouble? Are all these events predetermined to teach us certain lessons, which is why this whole subject came up in Soul School on Monday night, because I felt like it was prime time to, you know, I mean, the universe had taken me to school that day. And I felt the need to share it, because I know that if it happened to me, it's happened to other people too. And perhaps by processing it with them live on the air, that there would be some healing that took place, not just with myself, but with our viewers, our listeners. And so because I didn't have you on Monday night, Jeff, I really wanted to talk to you about this, because you are so staid and so and, you know, Tony, you are as well, you know, very calm and centered personalities, you know, both, but also two extremely sensitive men, which you have to both know that you are more the exception than the rule. So I feel very open and comfortable with both of you being able to discuss literally anything with either one of you. And therefore, I value and I cherish your friendships, but I also treasure your feedback, because I always learn something from your perspective, your unique male perspective that has a lot of feminine qualities and sensibilities to both of you, which is high compliment to both.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
you. Yeah.
You know, you always talk about Soul School and that the test always comes before the lesson, and the lesson is only learned after the test. But for each individual going to school, they don't know what's on the agenda. They don't know what their classes are and what they're supposed to learn. And it's different for everyone else, because people are at different levels. So that might be also part of that frustration through it, is, you know, getting hit with things that may be those sensitive areas or those learning lessons through this life, or however you want to explain it. But, you know, those things that really rile an individual up might be exactly what they're here to learn, understand, and get a better grip on, or better understanding of how that affects them, versus, like Jeff was saying, how they react to it, how they handle it. That could very well be an individual's choice for what they're supposed to acquire and learn.
Yeah, no, and this is the quote I was alluding to earlier by Frankl. And I don't know if this comes directly from Man's Search for Meaning or another work, but he says, and again, this is Viktor Frankl, survivor of Auschwitz, the founder of the logotherapy school of psychology, wrote that between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom.
Mhm.
You don't. I'm going to like go into preacher mode here.
Go,
Sorry.
go, do it.
You don't discover that you have that power until you suffer. You don't know you have it. How would you know that you have that power until you suffer? That power lies untapped, undiscovered, buried under the rubble of whatever ignorance until you suffer. And when you do suffer, you discover things about yourself that you would never have discovered had you not suffered. And suffering sucks. I mean, there's no other way. There's no other way to put it. Suffering just sucks. I mean, even when you come out on the other end of it and you look back and you see the lesson in it, it doesn't change the suckiness of the event itself, right? It never. The only thing that can sweeten it is that you look back and you can see what you learned or how you grew, but it does not change the hurtful nature of what happened.
Yeah.
But it is where you discover a power that you and I have. We do have it. I think we all have it. Whether we've tapped into it or not, we have it. And that power is the power to choose our response to a given situation. And our response to a given situation is what it turns it into, what it ultimately will be, at least to us. And to us, the individual, that is reality. Our choice is reality as far as we're concerned. And I was thinking of something as you were talking earlier, Andrea, and I just wanted to throw it out there, is that people think often that forgiveness is kind of like this weak, I guess just this weak thing, where you just sort of brush aside the wrongs done to you.
Yeah, no, it's the opposite. It takes an inordinate amount of strength to forgive someone.
Right. And I don't know who the quote comes from. I don't remember the genesis of the quote, but that essentially unforgiveness or bitterness or a desire for revenge is basically drinking poison and expecting the person who hurt you to die.
Yeah.
And forgiveness is you spitting the poison out of your mouth. And that's what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is a strength that helps you to continue on, to survive, and to ultimately thrive. To seek vengeance and the destruction of another person, revenge, unforgiveness, bitterness, it's drinking poison and sitting back and folding your arms and waiting for the person who hurt you to drop dead. But that doesn't happen. You're the one who's going to drop dead. Forgiveness is a strength we find in the midst of suffering when we realize, look, nothing will ever change the sucky nature. That's a powerful philosophical term, I know. The sucky nature of what this person did to me, or what this person did to whomever. But if I hold on to it, I'm the one who suffers. They're over there living their best life and whatever. And I'm the one who's suffering because I'm holding on to this. Forgiveness is really releasing yourself from a tie to this person. And that's a power. That's a power that can't be taken from you. And really, that's a strength we can only find in such situations. I also wanted to say, Andrew, because I mentioned the whole idea of choosing hope, and then you had said, you kind of wanted to flip it on its head because it was kind of your hopeful nature that made you
dare,
dare.
To even dare.
And that was a really good point, and I didn't want to leave that untouched in light of what I said, because I was certainly not. Yeah.
But what's interesting about that too, when you think about, because I think that, hope is all we've really got, ultimately it's all we've really got, hope for a better future, which is why when we say Happy New Year to a family or, a family member or a friend, we mean it. Yeah. I wish you a happy, healthy, prosperous new year. Yeah. I wish all the best for you. That's hopefulness for the future.
Yeah.
And yet it just seems juxtaposed against the notion that having our hopes dashed, fractured like crystal on concrete, having our hopes dashed is part of our spiritual, emotional evolution
For sure.
as human beings, because it is in the dashing and the shattering of hope that particular little sweet spot emerges, where we get to not only subjectively but objectively watch how we react, how we have evolved, how we've grown from one traumatic or painful event to the next, to the next, to the next in our lives.
Yeah, for sure.
There are very, very few people who live life unscathed, untouched by pain and loss and grief and some emotional toll being taken by our interpersonal relationships, whatever the nature, whatever the level, as they come to pass in our lives. And I think that part of this is the disintegration, or at least the temporary dissolution of hope that is in its own way a revelation.
Yeah. No, for sure. And there's a biblical principle Jesus lays out in the Gospels, which is that we are to be as wise as serpents, but as innocent as doves. We all begin with the innocence of the dove because we know no other way to be. We naturally trust. That's how most of us come into this world. But the shrewdness of the serpent comes with experience. The problem is some either just stay in that dove-like naivete, or
that would be me. That would be me. Go ahead, laugh it up, Tony. Really.
Or we become so jaded that we get stuck in the shrewdness of the serpent, whereas Jesus said, be as wise or as shrewd as a serpent whilst maintaining the innocence of the dove, which suggests an experience, an evolution. Jesus talked about being born again. Now, in my evangelical upbringing, to be born again meant that you had like an experience at a church service where you repeated a prayer after a preacher and you were born again. But to be born again is really to experience childhood a second time. You can't help but experience childhood the first time because, well, that's just where you are. You didn't choose it. You're just there. You're a child. You can't help but be what you are because that's where you are. However, after growing up, there is an experience we can go back to. Paul Ricoeur, the philosopher, called it a second naivete, where after having grown up and experienced the harshness of the world, the realities of what's out there in the universe, we come to a point where we choose a kind of faith and naivete again. We choose to trust again after having had our attempts at trusting and loving dashed against the rocks. We come to a point where we realize, yeah, it sucks and it hurts. But if I don't trust and I don't love, I'm not really alive. And we choose it again, even after having realized that the world is not all, rainbows and unicorns and what have you. And that, I think, is what it means to be born again. It's to choose childhood after having realized that the world was not what you thought it was when you were a child. That is the wisdom of the serpent mingled with the innocence of the dove. It's where you know what's out there, but you choose to have an innocence about you because you know that place of vulnerability, that place of love, that place of forgiveness, that place of being willing to receive love, even after having been stung by the same, is really the only way we live. And that's that second naivete. I think that's what it is to be born again. I think Nietzsche called it, I think it's in Genealogy of Morals, I could be wrong. He called it, that maturity is recapturing the seriousness of a child at play. It's having lost that once and then rediscovering it. You're as wise as a serpent now, but you choose the innocence of the dove. And boy, that's not easy. And it's easy to just give a little homily about that and say, this is how we should be. This is what it means to be alive, blah, 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 blah. It's easy to say, but man, all of life is discovering that. And, you know, the thing I think people, we talk about love, and we always talk about love in the floweriest sense of the word. But really, to love is to open yourself up to the possibility of deep, deep suffering. To close yourself off to love is to guard yourself from suffering. If I may read a quote, if you're familiar with the book The Prophet by Khalil Gibran,
Yes,
incredible book. I don't mean to shameless
I
plug
have it
here.
memorized, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, shameless plug here, but I'm currently working with a publisher called Coir Classics. I'm the editor of this new imprint, and we're doing a new edition of this in the next coming months with a foreword by Paul Young, who wrote the book The Shack. Shameless plug, but also not so shameless. However, this is one of my favorite lines. This prophet in the book, you just have to read it to understand the setup, is asked about love. And the prophet says this: when love beckons to you, follow him, though his ways are hard and steep. And when his wings enfold you, yield to him, though the sword hidden among his pinions may wound you. And when he speaks to you, believe in him, though his voice may shatter your dreams as the north wind lays waste the garden. For even as love crowns you, so shall he crucify you. Even as he is for your growth, so he is for your pruning. Even as he ascends to your height and caresses your tenderest branches that quiver in the sun, so shall he descend to your roots and shake them in their clinging to the earth. I mean, now that's just, for one, that's just gorgeous wording, but there's so much truth packed into those words as well. To love is to open yourself to the possibility of suffering. And this hypothetical prophet in this fictional, this work of fiction, when he's asked about love, he says, look, when love beckons you, follow him, even though it beats the hell out of you. It is also what introduces you to what heaven is, because without the darkness, you don't know what the light is. And we think the darkness is evil, but the darkness isn't evil. The darkness is just what teaches you what radiance is. It's what opens your eyes to what it is. And these two things work together. And I think if being, quote, born again means anything, it means you experience the greatness of love, and then you experience the bitterness of love, and somehow, some way, at the end of it, still choose love, all while knowing that there's suffering involved. And that is, I think, a power that you only can discover if you suffer. And I think that's what it means to be as wise as a serpent, but as innocent as a dove. And I think that's what it is to be a mature human being who has really learned the lesson that we're here to learn in Soul School.
Well, it requires courage. It requires courage, a real bravery to put yourself out there in such a way. And for most of us, I think that you can't help who you love. Mm-hmm. It'll hit you like a brick, right, Tony? I know. Yeah. Cherie hit you like a brick. I know she did.
Like a ton of bricks. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so you got really lucky. You got really lucky because it's. She never for a moment misrepresented herself. Never for a moment was she anything but genuine, anything but Cherie, who I know very well now to my great benefit. And you're a lucky guy. You really are.
I know.
It's, and she has so much to teach you. And I know that you give of yourself in the context of that relationship with an equivalency that I have rarely seen among married couples. Usually there's a dominant one and a more submissive one, and it's not always what you would assume, that the woman is more submissive. Sometimes it's the man. And we all have a tendency to role play in the context of every relationship
Right.
that we have, whether it is, of a romantic nature or a friendship or, a business associate. The people that we interact with and engage with, they have a certain expectation of how we've always been and how we will continue to be. And we have a very marked tendency to meet that, to not only know of its existence, but to meet that expectation. It's part of civilized discourse in a civilized society. So we meet the moment. And when you are with somebody that is an intimate partner that you have, when you're most vulnerable, is when I think that is when you come to understand just how dangerous it is. Just how dangerous it is.
But many of the things that Jeff stated when he was speaking before, I mean, it's the whole principle of that if you get slapped, to turn the other cheek. And he was explaining other various scenarios that literally fall along that same line. But then that true power is being able to know you've been hurt, know you've been insulted, or whatever the combination of events were that made you angry or upset or infuriated or whatever words you want to choose. But that power comes in being able to take that step back and understand what occurred, but not react to it in that violent or attacking manner. And then being able to handle it in a method that doesn't escalate it. And, there are so many sayings that float around out in social media that follow that same principle. But like 3 of the things that Jeff was explaining is that same principle. And that, I believe, is truly where that power exists, because like Jeff said, that's never easy to do, ever, under any circumstances, whether it be relationship, whether it be friends, whether it be somebody you barely even know. When you get hit with that type of insult or injury, it's kind of like that fight or flight response when you first get hit with it. Mm-hmm. But what Jeff was explaining is that it's that true power to be able to just take that half a step back, control yourself through it, and then allow yourself to react, respond, or in a more civilized manner. But I thought it was really interesting because many of the things said tonight all fall to that same kind of principle.
Yeah.
And just curious stuff, no doubt about it.
And I think that it's universal to the human condition. I mean, what kind of comments are we getting in the chat tonight? Unfortunately, we don't get to see the chat, but I'm sure people are responding to this.
Oh yes,
because
absolutely.
A lot of them have been there before. But if you come across anything, question for Jeff, or any commentary, Tony, feel free to put it up, because this really is more of a group discussion tonight.
Okay.
Because we're taking a deep dive down that rabbit hole. Oh, and by the way, it is the year of the rabbit. So what better time to take a deep dive down the rabbit hole than, 2023, to explore our emotions.
Right.
And to help heal each other from, grievous wounds that, if you dare to put yourself out there, if you dare to love, as Jeff said, although, Nietzsche was a drunk. But still, he came up with some really good stuff. But he had an issue.
Yeah.
But then again, so did Mozart, and that doesn't nullify his genius either.
Right.
If somebody wants to reach out to Jeff or to any of us, they're absolutely welcome to do that, and we will respond, because it hurts to be human. It does. It hurts to be human. There's no way you can get through this life. As I was saying earlier, I mean, it is the rare individual that gets through life untouched by pain, grief, loss, or, especially a broken heart. Very rare. And those are the individuals that are so wary, so ambivalent about life, that they just don't let themselves be exposed to anything that could conceivably hurt them, and remain very emotionally reclusive. Yep. You have to be able to accept your part in your own suffering too. Now, what do you mean by that, Miss Aaron? What do you mean by that? I know what she means. That's a rhetorical question. I just wanted to follow it up with another comment.
Yeah. Could I say something for a second? I don't want to.
Please, absolutely.
Yeah. So, when you said about having a broken heart, I'm just thinking. There's a passage in Isaiah that says the Christ, when he comes to bind up the brokenhearted. Right. Now, use this as a complete metaphor. A broken heart is a heart that's been shattered and scattered, right?
Yes. Yes.
Now, one of the things that happens in PTSD, or when we experience real emotional pain and trauma, is that the heart is shattered, and a shard of who you are is disconnected from the larger whole, and you essentially remain who you were at the time of that trauma. So if at 7 years old, your father left or your mother left or whatever, insert traumatic scenario here, that heart is shattered. It's broken, literally. And there is a part of you that remains who you were when that event happened, whether you're 25, 30, 40, 50, 7, whatever. And when that emotion, when you're triggered and you're taken back to that time, you become who you were in that moment. You become the 7-year-old child again. You have the reasoning of the 7-year-old child. You have the emotions of the 7-year-old child, or the 25-year-old young married person who felt betrayed, or the 40-year-old person who lost their job, or whatever. You're there again. Okay, now it says that what the divine does, the work of the sacred, the work of the universe, whatever metaphor one wants to use, is to bind up the brokenhearted, is to take those pieces of ourselves, right, that have been shattered and scattered, so that we're not a whole person, we're not integrated because of trauma, because of things we've experienced. We're broken and we're spread out. I think what Bilbo Baggins says, it's like butter spread over too much toast, right? Yes. We're not a whole anymore. We're just spread out. And so we lack that strength. And we might not even know, like, where'd my strength go? Where'd my vitality and the energy I had when I was 20? Where did it go? Well, we're broken and we're shattered and we're scattered all about, right? And so the work of the divine is to take all of those pieces and reconcile them and bring them back into this sacred wholeness. And sometimes, and I've noticed this, I started having panic attacks a few months ago. I have not had a panic attack in years, like a decade. And I started having these. I mean, I literally switched to decaf, and I'm like a 5 cup of coffee a day guy. But
that's useless warm brown water.
It is, but like my heart rate was just spiking, and I was getting so anxious, and like, and I haven't had that in years, And I was sitting there, I was like, okay, trying to figure out all these different ways to calm myself down, sharp breaths through the nose, all this stuff, that we all kind of know and learn. And at one point I'm having one of these and I'm realizing there's something in the depths of me that is speaking to me in this moment of panic. And the thing that is speaking to me is this younger version of myself that is afraid that what happened to me at this age is going to happen to me again. And that panic is that younger version of me trying to break through to me now and say, hey, I'm terrified because when this happened to me at this age, there was nobody there to tell me it was going to be okay. There was nobody there to put their arms around me and tell me, you're going to be okay. It sucks right now, but you're going to make it. There was nobody there to do that. And so that part of me is still this shard of my heart that's whatever age I was.
Little child, yes.
Yeah, and it's reaching up to me now, the grown-up me, saying, hey, can you help me here? And when I realized that that was what was going on, that in some ways my broken heart was being healed, my lights just went out. I don't think I lost power, but my light went out.
No, you didn't.
Okay.
Isn't that interesting that all your lights just went out? That's
so I hope this version of me is okay. I'm a little.
It is. It's fine.
Okay. So I think my heater must have blown up fuse or something. Anyways, but when I realized that that was what was happening, that there was a younger part of me that was reaching up and saying, hey, help me. I need help. I need comfort. Nobody was there for me. And I would quiet myself. I would put my hand over my heart or over the part where I was feeling that, in that moment where I was feeling it. And I would just quiet myself. And I would imagine myself with the version of myself that I felt was trying to communicate with me. And I would see myself just putting my arms around myself as a friend would do and say, you're going to be all right, man. You're all right. And just calming them down. And I found a peace and a calm there that none of the other techniques that I've learned have ever afforded me. And when you were when you said about a broken heart, that just came to me. And part of me wonders, situations like this, do they arise because God, source, the universe, whatever metaphor you use, is doing what that thing does in attempting to heal the brokenhearted? And sometimes you don't realize your heart is broken until you stop and listen to it. Yeah. And when you stop and listen to it, you realize, oh, there's a 15-year-old Jeff who's wounded. There's a 25-year-old Jeff who's wounded. There's a whatever-year-old Jeff that's wounded. And I need to just stop and bring them to my chest and hold them and say, buddy, you're going to be okay. And when I do,
essentially what you're talking about doing here, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I'll just interject quickly, is essentially you're the parent healing your own inner child once you recognize that child still exists, is still in anguish, is still terrified. And that shard, that fragment that blew up all those years ago, that's still floating around in, the ether of your own soul, is still there crying out for some kind of recognition. And so you're wise enough now to love that little boy well, to take him in and to surround him. It's a lot like what I talk about embracing fear. Fear has absolutely no power over us once we embrace it and love it and thank it for being one of our, base human emotions.
Yes.
And thanking it for every time that it saved us from making a bad decision, but then kindly telling it, but you don't get to run my life.
Right.
Love runs my life, not you.
Yeah.
But when you embrace that inner 7-year-old that was traumatized and hug him and comfort him and assure him that it's going to be okay, you're healing him.
Yeah. And there's a tremendous strength that returns to you when you do that, because we're like computers that we're running poorly and we don't know why. But if you hit Control-Alt-Delete and you open up your task manager, you see all these programs that are running in the background that you didn't know were running in the background, and traumas that shatter and scatter the heart. We have all these versions of us that are stuck in these different stages, and they're all trying to reconcile and solve these problems from years gone by, decades gone by. And we are so sapped of strength and energy in the present because we are living in the past. Unconsciously, we don't know we're doing it. We don't know we're doing it. But there's versions of us that are living in the past, trying to reconcile problems that have already occurred. And so sometimes when anxiety comes to us, or panic attacks even, or these feelings in the body that you're just like, God, what is that? Why do I keep having this sharp
anxiety?
pain?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And somebody's listening. You've thought you were having a heart attack over the last maybe month because you kept getting these sharp pains in your chest. There's something in your past that's trying to communicate to you. When you lay down tonight, put your hand there, close your eyes, and it will come to you. It will come to you almost instantly because it's very eagerly trying to communicate to you. You don't have to do much. It'll speak. Please do that. Please do that. But these there's so much of us that's spread out there, and we don't know why we're so exhausted. We might be eating right, we're sleeping well, we're doing all the things we should be doing, but we have no energy, we have no strength, we're sapped, and we don't know why. Well, it's often because there's these versions of us that are trying so hard to solve problems that have already occurred. And what actually needs to happen is for you and for me to integrate these past versions of ourselves into the present version of us by holding them and telling them, you're going to be okay. And when that happens, all that strength comes back to you. All that power comes back to you. And sometimes anxiety, even panic attacks, these feelings that arise in the body inexplicably, sometimes I think that's what's happening. And even events that happen to us that trigger these things, again, there's no justifying sometimes the thing or the action or the choice that brought about the thing or the action. But the gift hidden within the grief is that you can find the strength to become a complete version of yourself by choosing your response. And it might take you time to do that. When we talk about choosing your response and how you react, it doesn't mean your first reaction defines the entire event. Because, good God, who among us reacts the first time the right way? It doesn't. Anything good takes time. Anything worth having, any wine worth drinking takes time. Any whatever worth having, it takes time. And you have to adapt. You have to adapt to the thing's rate of becoming. And it might take you time, to be able to response. There's reaction and response. Reaction is just what you do in the moment. And so if something hurtful happens and you react by saying, screw you, you son of a, okay, that's a reaction. Mm-hmm. That's human. That's normal. Response is ultimately what you do with it. Right. Mm-hmm. And that might take time for that to develop in you, to develop that proper response. So don't think your initial reaction defines, the outcome. That's not it. That's just, you're human. You're allowed to flip out. You're allowed to flip out, have a pity party, smash some stuff. You're allowed that. That's normal.
Except antiques. There's no smashing antiques.
Yeah, no. Yeah, for sure. Because don't do that. But you're allowed the outburst. It's about the ultimate response. That's what really matters. And that might take time to develop in you.
It does. It takes time to process things. Yeah. Case in point, I've had this kind of niggling little disturbing thought process that keeps interjecting itself, throughout the course of this week. Should I have answered the message? Did I deleted everything out of my phone?
Yeah.
Rather than leaving that, that energy in my space where I might actually stumble upon it again. Stuff like that. The little, we talk about our broken hearts as in a metaphorical way.
Yeah.
It's where emotionally fragile. We can be shattered like a mirror.
Yeah.
And putting all of those pieces back together again to get an accurate reflection of who we are in that mirror is a lifelong journey.
Absolutely.
Especially for instance, an abused child.
Yeah.
No 5-year-old child has ever in the course of human history done something so bad that the corresponding punishment that resulted in that child being physically abused or emotionally abused or both, or sexually abused, there's your fracture. I've worked with that population for years of my life, and the underlying with these particular boys that I worked with, the underlying psychology was each one of them became an abuser because they had been abused, and it was the only way that they could exert any power in their lives, have any control in their lives. They were taught, conditioned from a very young age, and emotionally stunted in their growth. And so, that's a case in point where you have to rip up the plant and examine the roots with a child in order to shift that behavior so that it doesn't become a vicious cycle. So clinically, it's very interesting how human beings who abuse other human beings were almost uniformly abused before they became abusers. So it is this vicious cycle that takes place. And then there are people that have thankfully been spared that, but were attracted to someone who didn't seem to either possess a conscience or didn't seem to, care the way they said they did, or, were capable of betraying, a love relationship that, that's where the fracture can take place in, young adulthood. It can take place when, like you were saying, it can take place at any point in your life. Now, we go to our inner sanctum, our inner place, but this is all really, this isn't about here. It isn't, physiologically speaking. We talk about our broken heart, but really it's our fractured consciousness.
Yes.
That's really what it is, because that is the essence of our being is consciousness. If we didn't have consciousness, we would be oblivious to all pain. We would just be automatons. No, for sure. It makes me think. I posted it earlier this week, and I've been meditating on it as well. I think it's called "The Peace of Wild Things." It's a poem by Wendell Berry, who just says, I love Wendell Berry.
Oh, God Almighty! Yeah, the poet's poet. It doesn't get any better than Wendell Berry.
That's right.
But I don't remember the words exactly offhand, but essentially he says, when despair for the world grips me, I can't sleep at night. I fear for myself and my children's future. I go and I basically sit amongst wild things, those things that take no forethought of grief, and yet they just are. And for a moment, I find peace, And we as a species, we anticipate what it seems like no other species on the planet does, which is suffering and heartbreak and heartache. And maybe relative to the level of consciousness that a deer or a blue jay is operating in, maybe they do. But we're the species that seems to have that ability to look into the future and forecast grief and heartache for ourselves. And Barry was saying, look, when I'm feeling this way, when I'm looking ahead and despairing and anticipating the worst, I go and I sit among those things that continue millennia after millennia after millennia to live and to survive and sing the same songs and do the same things and somehow make it, who don't do what I do, which is sit on their bed at night and anticipate future suffering.
Mhm.
And in their presence, I find peace. In the presence of these, quote, wild things, I find peace for my wild, untamed heart. And that's brought me a lot of peace this week as well. And I don't necessarily know if that connects to what you were saying, but for whatever reason, it came to my mind as you were talking. But
No, it does make sense, and it's probably why I use nature as a personal antidote and a remedy for all things. You know, if I'm particularly distressed and I'm here in Georgia, I go outside and I rake and burn leaves for hours.
Yeah.
Just hours and hours, and I get completely lost in just being, just, practicing the presence of watching the smoke drift up to the sky.
Yeah.
And taking in, the feeling of the sun against my cheek and the sweat trickling down my face, no matter how chilly it might be, because I'm physically exerting myself.
Yeah.
And I find it incredibly cleansing and healing to be in nature. And I don't mean to say, I mean incredibly in the amount of good that it does me. Not that it's not credible that I should find peace in nature.
Yeah.
I think that is where peace resides.
Yeah.
Like my mother said, if you want to know God, go to the woods. Go to the woods if you want to know God. You're not going to find God in a, sitting in a pew or listening to liturgy. You're going to find God by coming face to face with its creation. And so in that respect, Wendell Berry and I are of the, the same ilk, the same mindset, that is our great escape, whether we know it or not. And the only way that we can determine that it is our great escape is to make the escape and to feel that transformation occur, where you go from angst and panic and fear to peacefulness and hopefulness for the future again, because you're in a safe space to feel and process those emotions.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I do. And it was Jesus the Christ himself who said, who of you by worrying can add a single day to your life? No. And he's like, so instead, consider the lilies of the field, consider the birds of the air, right? So who of you by worrying and trying to forecast disaster can really change a thing? And the answer is none of us. So instead, what do? He says, consider the lilies of the field, consider the birds. They don't worry. They sing the same song every day, and they never worry about going out of style. They've been singing the same song for millennia without feeling any peer pressure to change it up or spice it up a little bit. They're just...
I don't know, Jeff. Maybe. I got a couple of mockingbirds that I'm pretty sure it's a competition.
Well, you do have that.
Sure. Yeah.
You do have, but it's like they just are what they are. They just do what they
just
do.
Exist.
They exist, and they are, and they're not sitting up there in the tree being like, "Oh my God, what if tomorrow?"
Overthinking it.
And meanwhile, I'm sitting there like, "Oh my God, what if blah blah blah?" And it's like, I'm here. I'm a part of nature just as much as them, and somehow they make it, and I'm gonna make it too. So, who of you by worrying can add a day to your life? Not a single one of you. Do as they do. Just trust. The universe, God has a way of taking care of what it creates. And we just happen to be what it has created. And so somehow, some way, we're going to be taken care of. Somehow. And you know what, dude, I love it. Like you and I, we've talked about New Thought. We've talked about, science of mind and all that kind of stuff. And I love it. I absolutely love it. Such breakthroughs have occurred in my life as a result of applying these principles. You know, we've talked about individuals like Neville Goddard, who has said very explicitly that the imagination is God. That's what creates reality. And I believe that. However, I do also always have to add the caveat that, you know, there's a scriptural principle that says that God, and again, whatever metaphor you want to use for it, is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that you're able to ask or imagine. So there does come a point sometimes in life where you can't imagine the best outcome. And so you can't rely wholly just on your mind to create it. And it's okay in a moment like that. And that's the only shortcoming I've really ever seen sometimes in New Thought, is that sometimes it doesn't allow for that space of like, you know what, sometimes you've got to be able to let go and be held instead of always trying to hold it together. Yeah. And so maybe for anyone who's listening, maybe you're trying to apply those principles and maybe trying to manifest this and manifest that. That's all good and fine, and keep doing that. Mm-hmm. But sometimes you might find yourself in a place where you have to trust in something that is above your ability to imagine. And in that moment, it's okay to just sit and be held and trust that maybe the universe is a hospitable as opposed to a hostile place. And maybe somehow, some way, in the same way that the birds of the air and the lilies of the field are taken care of, you will be too. And maybe all of the responsibility isn't on your shoulders. And sometimes we come to a point in life where, while we do have to own our actions and all that kind of stuff, it's also okay and permissible sometimes for you to just rest and to receive and trust that your source will take care of you. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think sometimes in spiritual communities, especially self-empowering ones, and we all seek to be that, we sometimes neglect that because we want to teach people to create their own reality. And I respect that, and I do the same thing. But sometimes you do come to a point where maybe you don't have the strength to do that. And in that moment, it's okay to just let go and trust that God, the universe, source, whatever, is going to work it out. And you don't have to be able to imagine it or see it correctly in order to trust that it's going to work out. I don't know. That was just a thought that came to me.
Well, I think that it's, you know, we should have enough faith in the universe to allow it to manifest for us sometimes when we are weary, when we do feel despair, when we feel like our strength has been zapped from us. And you were talking a few moments ago about the notion that worrying will not add a day to your life.
Yeah.
Flip that coin. You worry enough and you feel enough stress, it will reduce the number of days that you have this life.
That's right.
It will.
Yep.
And that is immeasurable and incalculable.
Yes.
But it will shorten your lifespan because thoughts are things. Yeah. And you can literally harm yourself with your own thoughts.
Yep.
You know, and that's something that, you know, frankly, I have to tell you, I've been thinking a lot about, you know, about when I'm angry and, you know, I've been angry a lot about current events. You know, what good is that doing me physically? I mean, you know, if I'm not sleeping well, if I'm yelling at the TV too much, if I'm not going out and raking and burning leaves and mowing the lawn and you know, spending some time out in nature, if I'm too focused on what I desperately want to make right and can't, then, you know, how futile is that? And, you know, there's one thing about staying extremely well informed from, you know, a multitude of reliable sources. And then there is submerging oneself into something so deeply that you can drown in it. So, you know, I'm there trying to find that as a Libra, you know, with the scales of justice always swinging one way or the other. You know, that's to find that balance is particularly difficult for me. Yeah. So, you know, this is just another aspect of, you know, the psychology and the intermingling of the physical and the metaphysical, and
Yeah.
how we project out into the world, what our expectations are. Human beings, I believe we spend too much time reflecting on the past and projecting into the future instead of living in the present moment.
Yes.
And so, as we wind the show down tonight, I would like to suggest that, and I do not make New Year's resolutions because I don't believe in self-sabotage. I mean, talk about setting yourself up for disappointment and disaster.
Right.
Is, tell yourself you're going to lose 10 pounds in the month of January. And then all of a sudden, everywhere you turn is a gift of chocolate from someone that came in over Christmas,
Right.
Just don't even go there. Just, I would suggest that everybody just try to live true to themselves and their best life, their best self every day, to project kindness and good intentions and positive, helpful thoughts, not only for the world, but toward yourself. Be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
It's, I think it's the best thing that you can do, because I don't remember who said it, but if you learn to love yourself effectively, that's the greatest gift that you can give to the world, because you can't really love someone else or anyone else beyond your ability to love yourself.
Yeah. Yep. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. If you do not love yourself, you're incapable of loving neighbor.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I think that, Kathy, you're very welcome, sweetheart. Thank you for joining us tonight, honey. I want every episode of A World Awakening to add something to the discourse, cause people to think and feel, to live a deeper, richer life, because they spent this little bit of time with us. And I feel like tonight that we certainly did contribute to a very positive discourse, even if we discussed some negative things. But how many times have we talked about, we carry around a Sharpie and Post-it notes in our back pocket, and something occurs and we whip out the Post-it notes and write, oh, this was bad, and peel it and stick it on that event, or this was good, and peel it and stick it out on that event. What if everything just is? What if everything is consciousness and energy and existence? And that realization of everything being one thing does not make the realization will occur at that point that the darkness and the light are simpatico, and that they require the presence of each other for either to be distinguishable. So on that note, let us close this impromptu session of Soul School, my dear friend, and we'll end it the way we end our own show, with Be the Light You Seek and Class Dismissed.
Yes. Peace.
Good night.